everyone, and welcome to our first Climate Hope event, which is airing today on YouTube. And today's event is all about inspiring hope, and with COP26 happening at the moment, it's all about showcasing projects that are happening in the region and UK-wide. So I'm here today on the Roca Marina, see the boats in the background, and the reason I'm here today is because we actually have a really exciting project in the northeast about oysters. So we'll be hearing about the oysters on the 12th of November at our event. We hope you enjoy the talks today. There are about 5 or 6 of them, and please do engage with the speakers, and then please do join us for the 12th of November for the second of our Climate Hope events. Have a good day.
Certainly the Pollinator Park project, if we don't support, pollinating insects, that the whole food chain could grind to a halt in not too many years.
We're really excited to work with local businesses to encourage them to bring pollinators to their site. We plant up flowers that attract butterflies and bees, and also ask them not to mow the grassed areas. Here at Climate Action North, we want more businesses to become pollinator parks so we can create meadows and garden areas for pollinators and have lots of stopping points and green corridors across the region. Get in touch with Climate Action North today to set up your pollinator park.
Hello, my name is Peter Cairns. I'm the Executive Director of rewilding charity Scotland The Big Picture, and I appreciate the invite to come along today and talk a little bit about our work. This really shouldn't be such a difficult question to answer. Rewilding, it's just a word. It's not something that we should be frightened of, but to make it work, we need to turn it from a threat into an opportunity. And that means a huge shift in perceptions and attitudes. We need to look beyond land being valued solely according to what can be produced on it, or in the case of many parts of Scotland, how many animals can be shot on it. So if rewilding is such a good thing, why isn't it happening across more of Scotland? Well, bit by bit, it is. This is Cairngorms Connect, a 200-year vision to restore 600 square kilometres of forest, peatland, loch and river right in the heart of the Cairngorms National Park. This is Glen Feshie, after part of Cairngorms Connect, after centuries of intense management for deer stalking and grouse shooting. This landscape is being allowed to breathe, to recover, to start to govern itself, nature being allowed back on its own terms. And for the first time in a very long time, the ancient pines on the floodplain have got neighbours, sprightly youngsters sitting next to their parents and grandparents. And already, after just a few short years, species that are threatened elsewhere are starting to show signs of recovery. Capercaillie, hen harriers, mountain hares, golden eagles, and pine martens. These animals were taken to the very brink of extinction. Their recovery in the last couple of decades shows what can be achieved. And the main thing that's changed is that we've stopped killing them. Cairngorms Connect is bringing about ecological change at a landscape scale. But what is crucial here, what is crucial to the future of all rewilding projects, not just in Scotland, but beyond, is that this wilding process is not at the expense of people. Contrary to popular misconception, rewilding doesn't mean de-peopling, quite the opposite. Jobs are already being created at Cairngorms Connect. Young people are being given the chance to forge a career, to forge a life in the Highlands. It's not just in the Cairngorms where we're starting to think like a mountain. For 60 years now, rewilding has been taking hold in Glen Affric. Glen Affric is part of another new initiative called East West Wild that links neighbouring glens in a mosaic of forest, wetland and restored peatland. A set of east-west corridors that red squirrels will use as commuting routes, that sea eagles will use as flyways. And again, at the heart of this big wild idea is the revitalisation of the local economy, the opportunity to support rural communities on the back of a restored wild landscape. Craigmeggy is another landscape scale rewilding initiative. Ditto Allerdale in Sutherland, ditto Benay in Wester Ross, and Coigach and Assynt in the northwest. None of these landscapes will transform overnight, but their journey towards a wilder Scotland has begun. And this is urban rewilding, if you like. This is the Cumbernauld Living Landscape Project, where nature is being encouraged right into the heart of one of our busiest cities. So these are just a few from a growing list of really exciting examples, rewilding projects, big and small, that hint at a new dawn. And it's a dawn that is full of potential for both wildlife and human life. We can do this rewilding stuff. We know how to do this rewilding stuff. Increasingly, we have the will and we have the resources. But some people say, why? Why bother? Why try fixing something that isn't broken? Well, because right now, nature is losing in a war with our insatiable appetite for economic growth. In just half a century, 50% of our species have gone into decline and 15% are at risk of disappearing altogether. Worldwide, the number of wild animals living on the planet have halved since 1970. Our climate is changing and the natural systems that underpin our very existence are under threat. So actually, you don't have to give a hoot about pine trees or pine martens or pine hoverflies, because this stuff affects us all. We need wildness in our lives. There is now compelling evidence that links a detachment from nature to an increase in both mental and physical conditions, especially among young people. And there's a wider moral issue at work here too. We've stripped our forests, we've drained our wetlands, we've eliminated many species that once lived here. These are all things that, quite understandably, quite rightly even, we now condemn in other countries. And yet we sit in judgment on those other countries, our moral integrity in tatters. Some people ask, can we afford to rewild? I would ask, can we afford not to? We need to find new ways to combat climate change. We need to find new ways to combat global nature loss. Can we afford not to rewild our uplands, knowing that if we leave them bare, the potential for downstream flooding dramatically increases? And are we closing our minds to the opportunities provided by species that many people think belong here, not as ornaments, but as part of that wholeness that Doug Chadwick referred to? As I said at the start, I can't tell you what to think. Scotland, the Big Picture, can't tell you what to think. All we can ask you to do is to look and to consider. And we accept fully that not everyone will agree with us about the benefits of rewilding. But to those people, we normally ask two simple questions. If not rewilding, then what? And if not now, then when? This is what hundreds of Scottish glens look like. This is described as a cultural or a working landscape. But does this landscape really work for nature, for climate, and crucially for people? This is what this glen could look like. Surely here there is more opportunity in a complex, diverse, multi-dimensional landscape. We've got into this habit of assuming that we have to choose between nature and people, but there is place for both. 2021 marks the beginning of the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. This is the first time there's been a global movement to restore and recover our degraded living systems, rather than simply trying to hold on to those fragments and threads of nature we have left. This country could be more, could be so much more. Scotland could become a world leader in restoring its broken ecosystems so that they work for nature, for climate, and for people. But it is people, it's all of us who will ultimately hold the key to the rewilding door. It's people who will decide what Scotland and Britain looks like in 40, 50, 200 years' time. What gets me out of bed every morning is the hope that we will all learn to see, understand, and implement the big picture. So thank you for inviting me along to speak today. I hope it's been useful. I appreciate that this story is focused around Scotland, but the messaging is pretty much mirrored, should I say, across the whole of the UK. And the other thing to remember is that, you know, rewilding is not just for big landowners or for conservation groups. It's not for someone else. We can all get involved. We can all help rewild our community spaces, roadside verges, local parks, cemeteries, and gardens, of course. If we all rewilded our own space, no matter how big or small, it would take us a long way towards a transformational recovery in nature. And how about encouraging our policymakers to think more about connectivity? This wildlife bridge in the Netherlands shows what connectivity could look like in the UK if there was political will. Rewilding offers space for everyone. On our website, we ask people to consider the following. Wild your space, as I've just alluded to. Make some noise. Most people don't realise that Scotland has become a nature-depleted nation. So talk to family, to friends, to work colleagues about the potential for a rewilded Scotland or a rewilded Britain. And put your money to work. Yes, of course, you could donate to Scotland the Big Picture, and we'd be delighted if you did so. But it's also about consumer choices. How and where you travel, the food and the products that you buy, how you spend your money has a major impact on how our landscapes will look in 50 years' time. So you can learn more about Scotland the Big Picture and about rewilding on our website, scotlandbigpicture.com. And as you would expect, you can follow us on all of the social media channels. So I appreciate your time. Have a great day. Over and out from me.
Hi everybody, I'm Emma Whittenstall. I'm Executive Director at Festival of Thrift. Festival of Thrift have been celebrating sustainability since 2012. We promote the concept of sustainable living and a voice for sustainable issues globally and locally. The festival builds a creative community through sharing skills and ideas for our sustainable future. We deliver a free year-round programme culminating in a Greenfield Festival weekend. In September 2013, thousands of people flocked to Darlington to experience inspirational speakers who joined forces with skill sharers and ethical traders to help place creativity at the heart of our shared sustainable future and celebrate a new way of ethical living. Festival of Thrift positioned artists as inspirers to action and encouraged change through workshops, exhibitions and performances, giving families the confidence to create while having fun on a budget. That first festival was a huge success and we've continued annually ever since, establishing Festival of Thrift CIC in 2015 with a mission to benefit the community and advance public awareness of sustainable living. Now based in Redcar, we reach new audiences from all over the UK year on year, building new partnerships with organisations that share our ethos. Our focus has always been on how individuals can make small changes, the shift to thrift, that will add up to a big difference for the future of our planet and encouraging others to join us. Our main output until last year had always been a large-scale, free annual festival. However, in 2020, we had to think differently and diversify our offer while maintaining that community celebration in the same space and time. It was of huge social, economic and artistic value. So in August, we launched Thrift Your Place to encourage audiences across the UK to make their own festival. We worked with artists to create 13 distinct creative projects available to download. We also printed 2,000 packs, which were distributed through family centres, food banks and housing associations to ensure that the festival was still accessible by all as our physical event would be. We mounted a small community festival sandwiched between two lockdowns with and for the residents of a street in East Cleveland, with the same care and attention that we give to our large festival. This resulted in a hugely positive feedback from participants, and it's the picture that you see here on the right. Film footage of that was then incorporated into an ambitious pioneering online festival, which included 5 hours of hosted live stream of diverse new commissions with an emphasis on participation. Zoom-based talks and debates on key sustainability topics from green energy to mental health, food sharing and campaigning. A make and do section of interactive workshops and activities for the family, and an online marketplace of eco-traders. Our traders are a huge part of the festival and we wanted to continue to support them in any way we could during those tough times. All this live activity was BSL interpreted and audiences could engage through Facebook, YouTube, social media, providing real-time feedback through the day and beyond. On International Women's Day, as a female-led organisation, we were invited by Arts Council to take over their Instagram feed, allowing us to showcase our values and highlight our message to their 60,000 followers. Our ethos is all around finding creative ways to live more sustainably and to look after the planet. It underpins the entire programming and delivery of our festival. Effective social action, we believe, comes from the communities connecting towards a common goal. We work not just for, but with. We seek to lead by example, to show rather than tell, to inspire. We act as a convener, a place of peer-to-peer connection between equals who all have something of value to contribute. Creative resilience helps us to imagine a better future together. And we believe in the power of play and uniting effect of joy. So through taking part in workshops, performances and talks that demystify environmental issues and are led by knowledgeable individuals, including socially engaged artists, audience will gain knowledge that will make them feel more confident and better informed to lead more sustainable lives. This year, we undertook a major listening project, which continues, listening to our community, our audiences, our supporters, to build a programme with them around our Commonwealth for 2022. And using the skills that we learned to mount the digital festival, we took our first campaign, Fix It Fortnight, online in February. So building on the incredibly popular Fix It Cafe, founded by two artists who are passionate about reuse, recycling, and repair, we delivered 2 weeks of interactive online activity. So with this first campaign, we wanted to position Festival of Thrift as a change maker, as a nationally important, sustainable organisation capable of inspiring the nation to change their attitudes to household waste. Fix It Fortnight was as much about fixing our mindsets and our attitude as fixing broken stuff and saving things from landfill. The campaign even caught the attention of the BBC repair shop, with Jade Blades supporting it over social media. And our creative programme reflects our sustainable ethos. So part of the Thrift Your Place for the digital festival, local artist Diane Watson produced an activity pack for families to create their own flower gardens of the deep, seen here on the right. This project aims to raise awareness of the consumption of single-use plastics. So working together with schools, charities and community groups, the project made 3,500 plastic flowers created from the bottles and debris found on the beach. Each flower represents 10,000 bottles to provide a scale relating to the 35 million used daily. The garden takes the form as an installation to visualise and emphasise issues of single-use plastic in a time of environmental chaos, which was displayed at the hyperlocal event in 2020. The Invisible Dust Commission Human Sensor was the finale of the parade in 2019, when Stockton-based dancers Urban Chaos moved in costumes that monitored and changed colour in response to the level of air pollution in the atmosphere from vehicle emissions. And our talks and debates have always been a hugely popular part of the festival, and we've discussed and dissected many topics. Our digital festival saw a tense debate on carbon capture, a particular highlight being Rebecca Newsom, the head of politics at Greenpeace, going head to head with Andy Lane, vice president at BP. And we're also passionate about young voices. And this panel here featured incredible, inspiring young artists, conservationists, business founders and activists. Daisy Ghazi, for example, is not only the youth leader of Extinction Rebellion, but was the youngest person ever to run as a member of European Parliament. At Festival of Thrift, we want more young people involved in what we do. This damaged world is theirs to inherit, and this generation is shouting the loudest, and we must include those voices in everything that we do. Our community outreach work is varied, and both our 2021 projects culminated with the showcase at this year's festival. Bridge to Bamboo was about connecting communities locally, nationally, and internationally through a series of workshops to design, test, and build a beautiful bamboo structure using one of the most sustainable building materials in the world. Our community development team engaged with different community groups, Hartlepool Minds for Men and Wellness for Women, Redcar Men's Shed and Bridge Hill in Middlesbrough, to work with an artist to co-design a structure and determine its function at the event and beyond, placing the possibilities in the hands of the community. The raising awareness of the climate crisis, increasing engagement and connecting communities was at the heart of this project. In 2022, the participating groups will be invited to attend Birmingham Commonwealth Games, where they'll be part of an impressive exhibition of bamboo structures created by communities across the globe as a result of this project. And the Young People's Podium was a platform for young people to express their hopes and dreams for their community, to have their voices heard and create a vision for a more sustainable future. We work with a diverse range of young people over 3 creative sessions to build confidence, teach how to craft a speech, and introduce performance techniques to help find their voices and deliver a powerful message. A group of these participants then delivered their message on stage live at the festival. It was fantastic feedback, and we continue to work with this group on other initiatives. The Festival of Thrift as an organisation is now building on our ethos and our existing sustainable working practices and challenging ourselves as an organisation to do even more to minimise the impact of our festival. We've put in place a lasting strategy to ensure our own sustainability and are sharing this journey with our audience. Working with Julie's Bicycle, we'll be using 2021 as the benchmark to measure our carbon footprint, waste and environmental impact and further develop our sustainability goals over the coming years. Festival of Thrift will be able to concretely evidence our commitment to sustainability, and by sharing our plans and progress, we can continue to influence and encourage others to do the same, building new partnerships and new alliances. Finally, I want to share a film for this year's festival with you. A record-breaking 50,000 came out over a sunny weekend in Kirkleatham to enjoy, watch, learn and share ideas and skills around our sustainable future and celebrate a new way of ethical living. So we're always keen to hear from people and organisations aligned with our values and ethos, and to build new partnerships and collaborations. So please get in touch.
Hello, my name is Carol Botton and I am the Executive Lead at NECO, and today I'm going to do a presentation for you all about NECO, the North East England Climate Coalition. Just need to share my slides, so bear with me while I do the fiddling of the technology. There we go, perfect. So this is what I'm going to be covering. What is NECO? Why we're taking the regional approach, and what is the specific story that the Northeast has to tell? Why are we working in coalition? What we're planning next, and how you can help and support us. So NECO is a cross-sectoral initiative, so we're bringing together the private, the public and the voluntary and community sectors, along with individuals, to tackle three key challenges: the climate emergency, ecological collapse, and the need to develop an urgent and just transition. We think these three challenges cannot be separated out, and we need to work on them consistently, collaboratively at the same time. And we're doing so under a shared vision of becoming England's greenest region. We know that greenest can mean many things to many different people, and this is reflective of the broadness of the work we're trying to carry out and the impact that we're trying to have across a number of areas. Why are we doing this? The partners involved in the coalition recognise that an urgent and radical response is needed in response to the global climate emergency and nature emergency that we are facing. And we want to make the Northeast a global leader in that response. Business as normal is not an option anymore. And we believe that working together and by catalysing and accelerating action across sectors, across organisations and individuals also playing their part, that we can go further and faster. We also wish to build upon the assets and means that we already have in the region to achieve net zero emissions, and to work collectively to seek further investment so that we can deliver initiatives at scale that will drive real change and create opportunities for our people and communities. Just going to take you back to the opening address at COP25, where the UN Secretary General was making the point about the centrality of coal and coal-fired power stations to the climate crisis. As it's highlighted here in red, he said that coal power plants continue to be planned and built in large numbers across the world, and that we need to stop this addiction to coal, or all our efforts to tackle climate change will be doomed. So basically the point is that coal, along with the other fossil fuels, is a key component and something we need to address head on. And as a region, we can link this back to our proud history of innovation and invention, and how we took a leading role in developing the technologies and engineering advancements that catalysed the first industrial revolution, including the first deep pit coal mines, the first steam engines, the railways, and the first coal-fired power station, amongst others. We then exported those technologies, the ones to get the coal out of the ground, to transport it by train and ship, and to convert it into electricity across the globe, including to those places that the UN Secretary General was talking about, where coal power plants continue to be planned and built in large numbers. That spirit of innovation, engineering and technological advancement is still very strong in the Northeast today, and therefore we want to position the Northeast as the leading region in accelerating the transition to a low and then no carbon economy in the same way that we did in the past. Of all the English regions, our emissions have come down further and faster than any other over the last 40 years, but we did start from the highest starting point. The region now has the least emissions in total than any other region in England. But if you look again at the data per capita, we actually have the highest level of any region in terms of our emissions. Our industrial base, especially the carbon intensive industries in Teesside, is a key factor for this. We still have significant distance to travel, and we need to continue to go further and faster in reducing our carbon emissions. We have great natural assets here in the Northeast: moorlands, forests and woodland, grassland, peat bogs, and our coastline are great natural assets for the region and fabulous carbon sinks. And through our rural and coastal landscapes, we have a unique opportunity to capture even more carbon from nature. And as I've touched on before, like the last industrial revolution, the green economic revolution will be driven by innovation, and much of it is already happening here in the universities and businesses of the Northeast, from renewable energy, offshore renewables and subsea technology, electric vehicles, smart grids and smart cities, battery technologies and new sources of renewable heat, including extracting heat from mine water. It's all happening here. Building upon this innovation and expertise, the region already hosts UK significant projects to support our country's journey to net zero, including the North Sea Link cable, which will bring renewably generated electricity from Norway to the UK, the Dogger Bank wind farm, which will be the largest in the UK, the Nissan electric vehicle factory and British Volt Gigafactory, and Net Zero Teesside, the carbon capture, storage and utilisation project, which will decarbonise the Teesside industrial cluster and make a significant impact to reducing our carbon emissions. As a region, we are already leading the way, and if we seek the support and investment here to reduce our carbon emissions, to support nature and to develop the skills and jobs for our people, we can significantly contribute to the UK's government net zero pathway. As one of the first regional climate coalitions with a significant distance to travel and with strong potential to be at the forefront of technologies and industries that will get us here, we believe that we can make a strong case to government to test, trial and invest in approaches here in the Northeast and to help the UK meet its carbon reduction targets. We also believe that as the smallest region, with a varied mix of urban and rural areas, highlands, lowlands and coast, and with a significant proportion of our population experiencing disadvantage, a clear case can be made to government and other investors who are seeking both environmental, economic and social benefits to pilot significant initiatives and approaches to the climate emergency, ecological collapse and the just transition here in the Northeast. Finally, this region needs a just transition. Between 1970 and the year 2000, the Northeast of England lost nearly 300,000 jobs in industrial production, including power and mining, and that's an average of 10,000 a year for over 30 years, as the Northeast became one of the world's first post-industrial regions. As a region, over those years, we experienced a substantially unjust transition out of heavy industry, and a high price was paid by our people, our economy, our communities, and on our natural environment. The lasting effects of that transition are still visible and felt in some of our communities and places today. Therefore, we need to ensure that the transition to a green economy for the Northeast will provide better paid jobs for our people, the opportunities to develop our skills to secure those jobs, and that the policy and investment decisions related to a net zero transition also consider their ability to improve the quality of people's lives, as well as the impact on the environment. For example, by prioritising retrofitting of housing, focusing first on those fuel-poor households, or investing in low or no carbon public transports, and by improving our green spaces, access to nature, both in urban, peri-urban and rural areas. We want a plan and approaches that will benefit our people, our places, and the planet. So why are we working coalition? We believe that individuals and organisations all have their part to play in addressing these fundamental global challenges. But we also believe that if we can work together in a coordinated way, we can get there faster and go further than if we were working independently. Collaboration creates opportunity. And in the case of NICO, there's huge opportunity for partners to share learning, to share best practice, and to share knowledge. And together we can develop initiatives with all the partners around the table. We can make a strong case to government and investors to test, trial, and develop approaches here in the Northeast to help the UK meet its carbon reduction targets. We also want to build up support from the ground up, from individuals, from communities and from small businesses. We want to help them make positive changes to reduce their own carbon emissions, and then to work with us to encourage government and big business to make the changes that we need from them too. By speaking with a collective voice across all sectors and with the support of local people, businesses and communities, we hope to attract both funding and national attention to get things happening here first. We want to be able to say, we've got ambition, we've got a plan, we've got the right people around the table, and we want to get things done. Here's a list of the key strategic regional or sub-regional bodies that are working with NECO as strategic partners. They work with us to help us drive forward and develop the work of the coalition. In addition, we're working closely with the region's local enterprise partnerships, combined authorities and the local authorities to engage them in our work and how we can support their own carbon action plans through the diversity of our network. We've established 7 working groups with a clear alignment to the UK Commission on Climate Change focus areas, as you can see on this slide: land use and agriculture, retrofitting, built environment, waste, green finance, indicators and public engagement. Over 70 partners are now working with us across these areas to develop regional plans and strategies and practical proposals for work that we can undertake collectively at scale across the region. We don't believe in duplicating efforts, and therefore where existing initiatives or activities are already underway, such as the North East Transport Group, the Energy Catapult and Net Zero, Tees Valley Net Zero, we are just working alongside and collaboratively with those projects and structures. This slide shows some of the 70 partners that are involved. But to be honest with you, it's becoming increasingly difficult to keep this slide up to date and to fit all the names on the screen. So in addition to our core work, we are also supporting the development of sector-specific activities, the health sector and the voluntary and community sector being key examples of this. And just as an example of one of the pieces of work for the North East voluntary and community and social enterprise sector, we've developed the Going Green Together website, which is a specific tool to help organisations take their first steps into reducing their carbon emissions and taking climate action. So there are 6 areas that they can work within, and in each of those areas there are up to 6 first stage actions that those organisations can take. So very much trying to get people to move into this space and to take direct action, and providing them with the advice and tools to enable them to do so. Our work with indicators, we're working with the National Innovation Centre for Data and across the 5 regional universities, as we want to be able to measure our progress across the region and across a number of indicators. We don't just want to track our carbon emissions and whether we're keeping within our carbon budget, but to ensure that the projects we develop and secure funding for are also having a positive impact on nature, our economy, on our people and communities, and then further specific targets around ensuring a just transition. So what next for NECO? Well, this is a long list, but I'm going to go through it to give you a flavour of what we're planning. So at this point in November 2021, we are coordinating a programme of events and activities across the region with the aim of building our network of supporters and raising awareness of NECO and the challenges of climate emergency, ecological collapse and the just transition. Those 7 work streams I spoke about before are continuing to develop their action plans and proposals. And going forward, we'll be taking those to government and to sustainable investors to turn them into realistic propositions. We're continuing to develop our website and other comms and events to showcase the work that's happening in the region, to share learning and resources and to educate and inform. We are undertaking a fundraising drive at the moment. We need to secure resources to be able to build a small core NECO team to really drive this work forward and to accelerate it. We're seeking donations from corporate partners, from universities and other strategic partners in charitable grants. And I'm really pleased to say that we have secured corporate funding from NatWest, Northern Power Grid and EDF, and we'll continue to be having conversations with lots of North East businesses about how they can help and support our work. Linking to that, we are building a NICO business network to support and encourage businesses to take action, and to also create and support new skills and job opportunities in the green economy in the region. We have plans to develop a citizens board with the key intention of giving voice and representation to our people and communities in this space, especially those that have less of a voice in existing regional structures, strategies and action planning groups, and those that have the most to gain and or lose from climate change. So with a particular emphasis of involving and engaging young people, disabled people, disadvantaged households and communities, and people from Black and minoritized communities. We are continuing that engagement with the LEPs, local authorities and combined authorities, and we are developing a regional evidence base and prospectus in partnership with the North East LEP currently to showcase our assets and our offer to government and other investors. And from early 22, we will be building upon all the groundwork that we've undertaken to develop a NICO strategy and long-term action plan. So finally, how can you get involved? Please do visit our website, nico.org.uk, to find out more about us, but also to access our news, events, case studies and resources. You can follow us on social media, on Twitter, LinkedIn and Facebook. When you do visit our website, please do sign up to our mailing list and make your organisational and individual pledges to supporting us with becoming England's greenest region. Obviously, help us spread the word. Talk to people about NICO, tell them what we're up to and encourage them to sign up. And if you want to get involved or support us financially or in kind, be very happy to hear from you. And finally, we want to keep our website up to date. So if you have any news, events, or you'd like to submit a regional case study of the work that you're already doing, please do drop us a line. And that's about it from me today. I hope it has been a useful overview for you in terms of what NICO is all about, what we're planning to do next, and how you can get involved. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.
Hello, my name is Sarah King and I work for Rewilding Britain as the Rewilding Network lead. Today I'm going to be talking about all the fantastic rewilding projects across Britain. So just to start with our definition of rewilding, rewilding is the large-scale restoration of ecosystems to the point where nature is allowed to take care of itself. Now, this is a long-term process that will take multiple generations, and at the start of that process, we might have to undertake some interventions to kickstart natural processes. But the ultimate aim is to allow nature to lead the way. It's also about encouraging a balance between people and the rest of nature so that we thrive together. And it's really important to remember that people are part of the rewilding process and that we're also part of nature and should be involved within those natural processes. In terms of the 5 principles of rewilding that we have here at Rewilding Britain, they are supporting people and nature together. As I said, it's really important to make sure that we are part of these natural processes and ecosystems. Working at nature's scale is also important, and we need to understand that the larger the areas that we can have in rewilding, the more we can allow natural processes to lead the way, and the more space we can give to nature, the better we'll have these mosaics of ever-changing habitats, and we can start to see the role that animals and plants and natural environments can have on these natural processes. We need to let nature lead the way. That's really important. And as I said, it's a long process, but we need to ultimately allow nature to lead the way and to give space to natural processes to show us what outcomes they want to deliver rather than outcomes that we want to put on them. It's also really important that we create resilient nature-based economies through rewilding projects, and I'll talk a little bit later on about some of these enterprises that are developing through rewilding projects that we're seeing in Britain. And we need to secure benefits for the long term. This is a long-term process. We need to be thinking in 50, 75, 100 years rather than the next 5 and 10 years. And that's vitally important for rewilding. And I just want to show you this video of some of the projects that are on the network. And I think one of the really exciting things about rewilding is that we see this kaleidoscope of different approaches. There's such a variety of different approaches through the rewilding network and the rewilding projects that we see across Britain. And this is just a snapshot of some of the different approaches that are happening. And I think rewilding brings hope, but it also brings with it this whole kaleidoscope of different approaches. And I really love the idea of being able to move through Britain and see unique ecosystems associated with that particular area, and almost being able to guess where you are just from the habitats and the species that you see around you. And as you'll see on this slide, not only have we got a kaleidoscope of different approaches, but we've also now started developing a map of all the rewilding projects across Britain. And I think just seeing this map with all the different pins on there really starts to show that rewilding is happening already. And it's really exciting to see the community grow. We know that there are lots of benefits to rewilding. I won't draw on this too much, but we know that rewilding can draw carbon from the atmosphere. It can help wildlife adapt to climate change, and it can produce these corridors for wildlife that's going to be vitally important as our climate starts to heat. We can help to reverse biodiversity loss. In particular, rewilding projects tend to really support an abundance of maybe common species, maybe not so much the rarer species, but really restoring this abundance of invertebrates and birds and bats that we've lost so much over the last few years. It can support diversified nature-based economies. And of course, what we've seen through lockdown is that we know that rewilding and nature can improve our health and well-being. And we've started to realise how important these areas are for us as human beings as well. We, as an organisation, we've started to build up some of the rewilding evidence, and this is really important because we can start to really showcase some of the benefits to rewilding. So I do actually need to update this slide. We've got a few more projects that have been included within our evidence now, but our analysis of sites across England have shown that rewilding projects can support more jobs. So there's been now a 50% increase in full-time equivalent jobs within 10 years of rewilding. And not only is it more jobs, but it's a more diverse range of jobs, from ecotourism through to still producing food and wild meat to guiding, and a whole range of other things in between. We've also seen a 9-fold increase in volunteering opportunities. So we're seeing rewilding projects supporting great opportunities for local communities to really get involved with the sites and to understand what's happening and take some ownership of it. And also all the sites that we've started looking at, and pretty much all the sites on the network, all still support grazing animals in some form. And we know that grazing animals and herbivores are actually really important for rewilding. So through building up this rewilding evidence, we can really start to show all the positive stories that are coming out from rewilding across Britain. And if you want to see more information about the jobs that are supported by rewilding, we've just released a report that's on our website around nature-based economy. And I would encourage you all to have a look at that report because it's got some really positive stories in there on how we can rebuild and restore jobs to some of our rural communities across Britain. But rewilding projects don't just support diversity of different rewilding approaches, but we also see a diversity of enterprises, from wildlife watching, tourism, still producing some food, even in small quantities, things like wild meat, gin production, other spirits. We see apple production, community orchards, a whole range of different enterprises. There's also education programs and wellness programs, and a lot of the projects still support some of our traditional land management, such as dry stone walling, to make sure that we're keeping some of those heritage features as well as biodiversity. So I just want to share this vision that we have of how our uplands could look in a rewilding setting. So this is an illustration of a typical upland valley. We can see very straight-sided coniferous plantation forestry. Most of it tends to be non-native. We can also see a lot of management that's happening within this valley. So there's some burning that's happening. There's also sheep grazing and other grazing that's happening. And we've got a very modified river going through the middle of it. So this is an environment that we see quite typically in a lot of our uplands. It supports some animals and biodiversity and wildlife, but not a lot. So if we were to change this valley and to look at more of implementing our rewilding principles within this area, in the short and medium term, we'd start to see the transition looking like this. So we have a much more natural river through the middle. We can see many more meanders starting to come through. It's been reconnected with its floodplain. We've taken some of those management pressures off the land, and you can see that maybe some of the trees are starting to come back. The plantation woodland has been replaced with native woodland. We can see that there's some more natural regeneration of scrub and a much more mosaic approach happening, and some of the biodiversity is starting to return. In the long term, the vision could look something like this. So we're seeing, again, the river's been dammed by beavers. We're seeing a much more naturalistic system that's happening there. We're seeing this movement of the river within its floodplain. If you look at the valley side, you can see that there's much more woodland, much more scrubland coming into this area, but also there is some grassland because we have low numbers of semi-natural herbivores within this area that's keeping some of these meadow habitats within there. We might have some species that have returned, so wildcats, maybe lynx, maybe eagles, but also more importantly, we can see that there are still people within this landscape. There's buildings within the valley bottom. They're working with the natural processes rather than against them, and these nature-based enterprises are being underpinned by this rewilding that's happening. So this is just an animation that we've put together as an organisation, but it starts to show what rewilding could look like in Britain, and I think this is really a message of hope. So I lead on the Rewilding Network, which is a growing community of projects, land managers, landowners, project managers who are rewilding land and sea. So if you go onto our website, you'll see a much more up-to-date map of the network. We have a growing number of projects on there, from ENGO projects, nature reserves, through to community-owned projects, as well as some privately owned projects. We've got a whole range of different upland and lowland examples on there, and also a whole range of marine projects that are starting to come on board as well. And what's really exciting about this community, and what I really enjoy as part of my role, is being able to see all the fantastic project work that's being undertaken by a whole range of different people on the ground. So it's really exciting to come and see all these different projects that are happening now, and I think that really helps to show that rewilding is possible, and these guys are leading the way, really. Through the network, we're also trying to build the evidence base, so we're starting to build up a bit more of a detailed map of the projects as well, and what we can start to do is overlay information about how these projects can start to join up with each other. So the map that we've got on here is a map of bug life beelines. We're also hopefully going to start overlaying some of the nature recovery network corridors once they come through. And we're doing some work as an organisation at the moment with the University of Leeds to start to look at where some of the rewilding corridors and the ecological integrity are, so that we can start to see how these projects can connect up, because we know how important wildlife corridors are and how important it is to start connecting up some of these fantastic projects. So I'm just going to go through some example projects from the network just to showcase all the different approaches that the fantastic project teams are working on. I'm going to start up in Scotland with a large-scale project that I'm sure many of you will have heard of. Borders Forest Trust have been working on the Reviving the Wild Heart of Southern Scotland project for 20 years now, and this is a fantastic inspirational project that's replanting trees and restoring woodlands to the valleys of southern Scotland. And this has involved a whole range of community effort. Volunteer groups have planted thousands and thousands of trees in this valley, and I think if you want to see the before and after photos, they're really inspirational to showing how we can go from those degraded landscapes through something that's much more diverse and much better for biodiversity, but also for the people to enjoy. Oh, and I'm just about to add, the reason that this project has had to look at tree planting in a rewilding setting is because there was a natural seed source there. So tree planting was needed to restore that seed source. Without tree planting, it would have taken hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years for the trees to reach this valley. So that was an intervention that was needed to then allow natural processes to lead the way and for natural regeneration to happen going forward. Down to the Lake District, you'll see on here we've got a few different pins on our network map that's starting to show some of the fantastic projects that are happening in the Lake District, including the Lowther estate. That's an estate that's rewilding quite a big area now, and this is done through restoring the river, re-wetting some areas, but also changing the grazing regime, so taking sheep off the land, replacing them with low numbers of cattle and horses, and allowing those animals to move through the landscape, taking down the internal fencing, and really start to restore some of these mosaic of ever-changing habitats that we should see naturally within our landscapes. Staying in the Lake District, we also have RSPB Haweswater. So the RSPB are doing fantastic work in this area to again rewild the valley. So they've been doing natural regeneration as well as supplementary tree planting to restore woodlands to these areas. They've also changed grazing regimes to include fell ponies as well as cattle, again to extensively graze these areas in low densities to start to restore this patchwork. And if we didn't have these herbivore drivers within the landscape, what we would get is eventually closed canopy forest, which isn't a natural state either. So what these projects are starting to show us is the role of herbivores within that landscape to create this mosaic of some areas that are grazed meadows, some areas where the natural regeneration is being knocked back by herbivores, and then other areas that are getting away and developing into forest. So this mosaic approach really helps to support a lot of biodiversity, but is also how our natural ecosystems should look within Britain. We're going to head down south now to another large-scale project down in Dorset. The Purbeck Heaths National Nature Reserve is again showcasing how natural processes can be allowed to lead the way. They're doing some work at the moment to again restore and mimic what our semi-natural herds of herbivores used to look like. So they're working, there's a whole bunch of landowners down there working together, including Natural England, the Wildlife Trust, the National Trust, as well as a few others, to start to then open up some of their land holdings to allow animals to move through the landscape more. And again, this is, as I said, this is replicating those natural herd movements throughout the landscape. So that's a really exciting project to show how we can start to join up together to mimic these natural processes and create a much more mosaic of heathland and scrub and woodland that's starting to emerge. Down to some of the medium scale projects that are on the network. In Norfolk, there's Wild Kenner Hill. A few of you might have been following them on Spring Watch and also Autumn Watch last week. Again, a really exciting project that's starting to showcase how rewilding can sit next to regenerative agriculture as well as traditional conservation. So the rewilding area there has got a beaver enclosure. They've also reintroduced cattle and horses and pigs, again to kickstart natural processes to really restore this dynamic mosaic of wetlands and scrub and woodland. And that sits next to a traditional conservation area where they're re-wetting the coastline to create coastal marshes for birds, and also a regenerative agricultural area where they're trying to still produce food, but much more sustainably than before. And it's really great to see this kind of mosaic of approaches within our landscape at Rewilding Britain. That's how we start to see rewilding sitting. We also have coastal projects on the network. So this is a project in Somerset. It's a managed realignment project. So again, quite an intervention project at the start, but one that was needed to protect the coastline and protect the coastal communities. It was undertaken by WWT with local community involvement in all of the design stages. And now natural processes are being allowed to lead the way in the area. So again, we're seeing cattle being reintroduced to these wetlands to do low density grazing and really start to restore some of these dynamic processes within the marshes. And that project now supports a lot of fish nurseries, as well as other important habitats for birds as well. So through the network, we can start to see that not only is rewilding happening within the uplands and lowlands, but it's also happening within our coastal areas as well. And finally, I spoke about marine at the beginning of the project. We are working with Marine Conservation Society as well as a lot of other fantastic marine organisations to start to bring in some of the marine rewilding projects to the network. And I think this is really important because whatever happens in our terrestrial environments does ultimately have an impact on our marine environments. Soil runoff, pollution from the land is ultimately affecting our marine systems. So it's really important to have this joined up approach, and also to highlight the fantastic work that's been happening across our marine environments. So the Coast Project is a member of the Rewilding Network. They've been restoring marine environments through a no-take zone for several years now. They're leading the way, showing how that can be done. And we are hoping to soon welcome a few more projects on the Marine Network as well, including the Sussex Kelp Project, the Seagrass Project, and some of the oyster projects as well. So it's really exciting to see these marine projects coming through and expanding out, and hopefully there'll be many more over the years as well. So just finally, to wrap up, that's been a real whistle-stop tour of some of the exciting rewilding projects that's happening across Britain. I'd encourage you to go to our Rewilding Network map to learn more about all the fantastic projects that are happening. And I think it's good just to think about what's the future for rewilding. We've got a lot of hopeful stories across Britain. We've got the momentum building behind it. So what's next? And I guess my personal viewpoint is that I would love to see more rewilding happening across Britain. As an organisation, we want to see 30% rewilding across land and sea by 2030, 5% of which is going to be core rewilding areas. And within those core rewilding areas, it would be fantastic to see more of these semi-natural herds of herbivores, so ponies and cattle and pigs being able to roam through the landscape. Maybe some other semi-natural herbivores at some point in the future as well, like elk and potentially bison. Beavers have been a success story recently, and I think it would be fantastic to see more wild beaver populations across the whole of Britain. And of course, seagrass restoration in the marine environment is also an excellent opportunity to show some of the hope of how we can restore some of the fantastic marine environments. Maybe in the future as well, looking to restore some of these missing pieces within our ecosystems. So maybe things like lynx and other predators, pine marten, and potentially even some of the apex predators such as golden eagle and white-tailed eagle, and restoring that nutrient cycling through leaving carcasses on the land. But I think I have a lot of hope for the future, because we have got so many fantastic rewilding projects across Britain. And I know that that's only going to grow over the next few years. So I think the message overall is rewilding is happening, and it just provides us a lot of hope to tackle the ecological and climate crisis. If anyone wants to find out more, I do encourage you to go onto our website. You'll see a lot of resources around what rewilding is, what's happening across Britain, and also some of the reports we've brought out around those nature-based economies. So please do go on our website to find out more, and of course take a look at the Rewilding Network projects and all the fantastic work that they're doing. So thank you very much for your time today, and hopefully that's been useful and given you a snapshot of the fantastic rewilding that's happening across Britain. Thank you very much.
I'm just saying goodbye to my wonderful husband and the co-founder of our charity. We set up the Word Forest organisation back in 2017. It's a small international reforestation charity. We plant trees, build schools, facilitate education and support women's empowerment in rural Kenya. And the reason I was just saying goodbye, I'm in a small bedroom in central Glasgow, along with a huge bunch of amazing volunteers and supporters of the Word Forest organisation. We're here for COP. It's the 1st of November. And I've got to be honest, this has taken a little while to get in the bag, as it were, in the can, if you like, because I've just had 2 weeks of COVID. I've literally just recovered, both of us have just recovered from 2 weeks being flattened by COVID-19. I think I've had 96 hours now of being clear of COVID. Obviously I test to clear to go into COP, everything's got to be clear, you're monitored all the time. But I needed hope in my heart that I would come back up the other side of that dreadful illness and be ready to work at COP. It's such an interesting topic, climate hope, because fuel, it's my fuel, optimism, it's my fuel, it's my thing that helps me put one foot in front of the other, and it has been for a very long, long time. Not just on the environmental front, I've been an environmentalist for a long time, But on a personal front, I had a challenging upbringing. My mum was alcohol dependent, so I had to have an optimistic default position then to just get through the days. They were really difficult. Had a younger brother as well who I had to try and keep shielded from difficult times. And mum, who I parented, my parent particularly in the last 2 decades, I suppose, of her life. So yeah, optimism and hope were necessary to just get through the day. And then I kind of found myself, as I say, being an environmentalist, and the more I understood about what was going on in the world, the more hope I needed to get through it. And I've, as a journalist, always tried to paint pictures, real pictures, you know, not rosy coloured ones, but not doom and gloom and, oh my God, it's all just dreadful and we're all going to go to hell in a handcart. It's always been, this is the situation, it's pretty grave, and here are a big bunch of ways that we can mitigate the problems, whatever they may be. So falling into creating the Word Forest organisation happened when Simon and I got married back in 2012. We were second time arounders. We're both, as I said, you know, full-on environmentalists. We don't do stuff. We didn't need anything at all. And our friend said, but we've got to get you something to mark your wedding, you know, mark your union. And we said, plant us a wedding forest, plant us some trees. A friend of mine was planting trees all over the planet for various charities. And he'd had this scientific epiphany that it made sense, if you're going to do it to help the planet and give us hope that we're going to be able to, you know, solve climate change as it was kind of back then, now climate chaos, existential crisis now it is in fact, that we should be doing that planting in the tropical zone. So trees planted near the equator grow up to 10 times faster than anywhere else on the planet. So in terms of mitigating climate chaos and giving us all hope that we're going to be able to lessen some of the extreme weather conditions that we are facing all over the world, that's the place to do it. So we did, and we had a wedding forest planted there back in 2012, about 150 trees. What I hadn't realised was the speed at which they grew. And I thought, wow, trees going in the ground, this is all brilliant. The extra bit that I hadn't realised that was going to benefit the world and give us all more hope, or give a community hope, were the commodities from that tree. So they're food-bearing trees. There's moringa, there's some mango, and it's, of course, moringa is like spinach. It's like spinach on a tree. It's wonderful. And of course, mango. So you've got food going into the hungry bellies of people that really need the food. And so you're actually not just helping with pulling down, drawing down and locking in CO2 from the atmosphere, but you're also tackling the Sustainable Development Goals 1 and 2 of poverty and hunger too, which is incredible. Because if you've got a standard mango tree, for example, at 5 years old, it just comes into fruit at 5 years, and it will be about 12 foot tall, which is awesome, and it'll have a good 100 pieces of fruit on it. 100 pieces of fruit, so enough perhaps for you and your family, and some to take to market to sell as well, which is incredible. So that alleviation of poverty comes with that planting of the tree, and careful, clever management of the planting is critical. So the way that we as a charity support the people who are tending the trees, we do that support in a variety of ways that bring hope to them as human beings, basically. Sounds very grand, but I mean, education on environmental matters is pretty much lacking in the UK. You can imagine over in rural Kenya, it's almost non-existent. So through a teaching program that has been created by the people in Kenya, so by permaculture teachers, by people who understand the environment, how it works, by people who can teach something called syntropic agroforestry, which is basically a way of growing food that is done within the protection of trees, so all kind of tree related. We've been able to spread the word within Kenya of how to alleviate the hunger crisis and how to encourage more of the normal rains to come through trees. So the more trees you have, the more the normal rains will come. Kenya has had terrible drought problems for a long time, as has much of Africa. And there's a really interesting thing. If you plant a tree, think it through, it's sweaty trees, think sweaty trees. Plant a tree, rain comes down, goes onto the leaves, the heat comes, the evaporation goes up, and if it blows downwind a bit, it's very windy where we plant. So there's always a wind going on, so it blows downwind a wee bit, and if it comes down again, the rain comes down again, falls onto another tree, brilliant, onto the leaves. Again, that heat will evaporate, it will take the vapor back up into the sky, and blah, blah, so on and so forth. The second it kind of comes down and falls onto dry, dead ground and gets soaked into the earth, which is so dry, there isn't an ability for it to evapotranspirate. So, therefore, the more trees there are, the more you're going to have the normal rains back. And we've worked hard over the last, let's see, how long have we been going? 5 years, to kind of get that message out there. And we've done it in a variety of ways. Working with women. Women's empowerment is critical in Kenya. If you educate a woman, you educate an entire community. And that's not denigrating men in any way. It's just saying, oh my word, the resilience and the ability of women when they're given a chance to learn something, to be able to spread that message far and wide, and to obviously all those things help them in the longer term to put food on the table and food into their bellies, which is just wonderful. Every woman wants to be able to feed their child. So again, hope runs through the center of everything we do. It's like the lettering in a piece of Blackpool rock. Climate hope. And we need to hold on to that. We need to continue to hold on to that. I mentioned a couple of things in the last couple of minutes about permaculture. Permaculture, if you're not familiar with it, is basically a way of growing food that works with Mother Nature. It's pesticide free, it's chemical free. Our friends over in Kenya couldn't afford pesticides and chemicals if they wanted them anyway. They have to work with Mother Nature. But there are some clever ways of doing planting that encourage other plants to work well, companion planting if you like. There's a really good way of growing, they grow lots of maize. Lots of people across Africa will eat a dish which is basically made from corn flour almost if you like. So it's maize, not corn, but we would think of it as corn, sweet corn. It's maize, and it's all pounded up into a powder, into a flour, and then mixed with water and basically boiled. So you can imagine something that looks a bit like Play-Doh almost, malleable and very pale and sort of a pasty kind of look to it, as it were. But it's sort of that's what happens when you have the flour and water and you put it on the fire and you just kind of boil it up and stir it up and stir it up. Now that dipped into some relish, maybe some onions perhaps, or some I don't tend to kind of have very much that they can put with it really, sometimes just on its own, but maybe if they've got some fish or even some fish bones or something like that, and they can boil that up and make a little broth to kind of dip it into a sort of a soup, that will be a staple. That will be a staple food. And that's all wonderful, but you need the maize in the first instance. And as I said to you, with the drought, it's been really hard to grow. But there are things you can do to help it to grow and to help other things to grow with it. And there's a system called the Three Sisters, which you may be familiar with. It's a Native American origin. And basically, they kind of grew maize, so corn, think sweet corn. And they grew two other things with it. They grew beans with it. So imagine a tall bean that would kind of grow and wrap itself around the stem of the corn. And then a squash at the bottom, which would maybe imagine a pumpkin or something like that, or a butternut squash. So you get these kind of nice big fat leaves, which protect the ground from losing moisture. You've got the beans fixing nitrogen into the soil. You've got these three plants kind of working together to produce better food. And it's genius. It's so clever, so simple. So those three sisters work brilliantly to produce more food, therefore giving people more hope that there's more food coming. And they work in combination. They work as a team. More climate hope. The team that we've got here at Word Forest, just cutting right back to COP, are incredible. We are a very small organisation. We are utterly reliant on donations, on memberships, on corporate partnerships as well, to keep us going forward. I don't know if you're aware, but over the COVID period, there were no donations given from the government to environmental charities to help them to carry on doing what they do. There were none given to international environmental charities. In fact, international aid was cut. No climate hope there, unfortunately, taken away, in fact. But we got through it, and we really struggled, because everyone was in lockdown. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't put on any events to try and get more money in the coffers to help us to continue our work. So we had to pivot on a dime from being a tree planting charity to being a food aid charity. And we literally had to stop everything because, of course, all our friends in Kenya were in lockdown too. They couldn't move around freely. And it was all really chaotic. But we turned our operation around to sending over £4,500 a month, every month, from March 2020 when we went into lockdown. And we did that for a whole year, for 12 months. We actually provided more food aid to the community, our tree planting community we work with, than the government did, the Kenyan government did. So I'm immensely proud of that. It did, however, bleed us dry. And with no ability to then top that money up, we lacked the ability to know that it was going to be fine, we were going to get there, because no one really knew what was going to go on through lockdown. But we kept going forward because we were powered by hope. We were powered by optimism. What other choices did we have that we'd be able to do fundraising events again? As it is now in November, I know we're out of lockdown, but we haven't really got back into doing or having people put on fundraising events for us because everyone's still kind of tentatively touching around. Do we go out? Do we do stuff? Are we back to normal or not? So again, we are just literally running on hope that we are going to get through this. But the point I was going to make was almost 50% of UK charities are expected / were expected, potentially may well be mothballed or closing due to COVID and the lockdowns. Up to 50%, that was the estimate. That's a terrifying number for all of us in all regards, from hospices through to health charities and all sorts, all manner of charities. So any charity, large or small, that has managed to hang on in there to this point must have been blooming fueled by the same stuff we have. Hope, optimism, hope that we would get back to business again. We would be able to just get a few quid in here and there to keep going. If we ever needed motivation for keeping going, let's look at the weather of the last week. I have seen, it doesn't take very much research to find it, I have seen floods, horrendous floods in the UK, far worse floods in Italy, literally in the last handful of days, and utterly devastational floods. Our educational trustee, Helen, lives in Somerset. Her back garden flooded and it ingressed into the house. Again, it's happened 3 times now. And she's really, in a very high position where she is. And yet the water system, the drainage system just couldn't cope with it, and our house was flooded. It's going to get worse on the weather front, and we have to just keep steadfast on our mission to keep going. Finding that inner resilience to rise above what's occurring and just keep putting one foot in front of the other. That's where we are. That's where we are. Last night, our full team of week 1, because it's 2 weeks in COP. Week 1 consists of myself, Simon, we're here for the 2 weeks. There's Jake and there's Sue in this little apartment with us. And in another apartment, we've got Lucy and we've got Lauren. Next week, we're joined by our special scientific advisor, Professor Emeritus Bill Maguire, who is one of the world's leading volcanologists. I don't know if you know, but there's a massive correlation between the way volcanoes and the world, the planet actually works, and climate chaos. And if you haven't looked into that, that's another whole big story and I haven't got time. Maybe that another day. But anyway, Professor Bill Maguire is going to be with us, and our patron, Claire Nazir, who is a meteorologist for the Met Office and a television weather presenter on, I think, Channel 5 and a couple of other outlets too. She does the weather. Now, a meteorologist, I mean, good grief, they know everything that's going on. They need hope. Bill Maguire was a contributor to the Paris Agreement. He's an amazing man. He really needs hope. He has seen far more at the real nub, at the real nose end of things, from the minutiae, the real business end. Writing, stuff for the Paris Agreement. I mean, my goodness, to have got to that point in his career where that was where he was at, along with many, many other scientists as well from all the way around the world. He needed hope that his words were going to matter, that his education was going to matter, that everything he could bring to the table was going to matter. And of course, you know where we are with that. And so, back to COP. We are at a pivotal moment, and I must be honest, I think I look dreadful. There's a little mirror over there. My eyes are tiny. I didn't sleep very well last night because, not least because, I was laying in a bed near our colleagues. The other flat is 11 miles away. It was very hard to get accommodation to be at COP, as you can imagine. Everything was ridiculously expensive. Our funds, as I said earlier, have been so massively depleted. But we did have contributions from 3 corporate partners who very kindly covered our costs to be here at COP. That means if you have paid us £2.50 for a tree, that's the cost for a tree from the World Forest Organisation, £2.50, that will pay for a tree to go in the ground, and that will also pay for perhaps a classroom or some permaculture teaching or a workshop for women to make washable sanitary pads, or the list goes on and on and on. That money will go and do what you need it to do. The corporate partners have paid for us to be here, which is just wonderful. I'm so excited. I couldn't sleep. The world's leaders are literally on the other side of those curtains within about probably 30 miles. And they're all waking up, I think, today going, holy crap, we need to get our fingers out. I think the feeling on the street when we leave in, I think, about half an hour's time to go into the town and get to the centre and get on with the work, the feeling when we get there is going to be awesome. And if I ever wore mascara, I don't wear makeup. If I ever wore it, I'm definitely not going to wear it today. There are going to be tears. Seeing people from our tribe, from environmentalists around the world, also fueled by hope, by climate hope and optimism. To be in their presence will be fuel itself. To be with them will be something that stays with me for the rest of my life. And I probably need to wrap up now because I'm becoming incredibly emotional talking about the gravity of this wonderful day. It's day 1 of 12 days of hard work. We will be bringing the stories of what's going on at COP to our supporters. Please go to wordforest.org/subscribe. And all of the bits that go into our newsfeed will drop into your box and you can read them. If you go directly to wordforest.org/COP26, no surprises, it was an easy one, wasn't it? You'll see what we've done so far. And I'll close with one tiny little point. So Simon and I came here by car. We drive an electric vehicle. No surprises there. We've been driving an EV for 7.5 years. This is our second EV. It's a second-hand one. We couldn't afford a new one. But it's got a reasonable battery. It does about 100-ish miles to the tank, if you like, of electrons. And so we had several stops, obviously from South Coast to Glasgow. And the penultimate stop before we got to Glasgow, we met this really lovely man, because there are more and more EVs on the road these days. And you have to queue frequently. There's not enough infrastructure there, but it's getting better. But I met a really nice man. I know, Simon's just coming in. Simon, come and sit with me just for a second. Called Nick. I know, he's telling me we've got to go. Called Nick Henry.
I am telling you we've got to go because we have to go and meet our colleagues.
I know. I've told them. They know.
Yeah. And Tracy's got to squeeze some breakfast in.
I do. I need to squeeze it. But anyway, so while we were having a chat and waiting for this chap to finish filling up his car with electrons so we could then do ours, we did a short ad hoc interview, and Simon shot this brilliant little interview. We had a few minutes of talk. He is the CEO of climateaction.org, and he too is fueled by optimism and climate hope. So jump onto wordforest.org/COP26, see that short interview, and over the coming days, just like I said, subscribe and you'll just get them sent to your box and see all of the stories.
Only twice a day.
Only twice a day, yes, and you're not going to be bombarded, but there will be several stories in there, short videos, pictures, images, goodness knows what. And I can tell you now, it will be jam-packed with climate hope for our future, for our planet, for our families, and for our friends across the world. Thank you for listening. Namaste.